Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Joe Biggs with LibertyOneTV.com, and you are watching Rogue Right. Today, we found out that a horrible terror attack has unfolded in New York City. 8 people killed, more people injured. Once again, another person has taken a rental truck and driven it into a crowd of people. And we hear talks in the Western society and in culture here in America and things like that where everyone automatically wants to talk about how guns are the problem. But the thing is, it's all about how people can have ill intent in their heart. People can want to do negative things and do bad things and hurt people. And it's not about guns. It's just about the person in general. Anything out there can be used as a tool to do harm to others. And I'm pretty excited to have Imam Tawhidi with me today. Someone that I've been watching a lot of his videos about. This guy's been really a truthful voice amongst Muslims and things like that. So welcome to the show, Imam Tawhidi.
I thank you very much for having me, sir. Thank you, and greetings to you and your audience.
Well, thank you. So give us a little bit of background about yourself, sir. Tell us who you are, where you're from, your credentials, your training, and all that, and then let's go into what's happened in New York.
Indeed. In brief, I'm basically a third-generation Muslim faith leader. I left Australia and went back to, after my initial studies, I went back to Iran to engage in my advanced Islamic studies. I gradually became the representative of the Grand Islamic Jurisdiction, that is the top hierarchy of Islamic authority within my Islamic denomination. I came back to Australia, established the Islamic Association, and I've been just working on a diplomatic level ever since then, trying to spread peace and reform. Alongside all of this, I've also been engaged in numerous academic programs, graduating from educational programs in counterterrorism and so on. I also give advice to government officials around the world. I meet with ambassadors, and we try and tackle the problems that we have, which also arise every now and then with regards to radical Islam and so on.
And what are some of the problems that you see from the inside looking in, I guess? What are some of the key things that maybe a lot of people are missing and not understanding that's going on? Or what are some things that that can be done to help, I don't know, open up people's eyes to get an understanding of what's really happening?
All right. From an administrative point of view, looking at terrorism from an angle of administration, I think there's been a big misunderstanding with regards to how we deal with radical Islam. The authorities, usually in the West and America especially, believe that by having good relationships with the Muslim community, that would then allow them to take control and prevent a terrorist attack. Unfortunately, that really isn't the scenario. By having good relationships with the mosque imams, you cannot really prevent an extremist from committing an attack. Now, we do call them lone wolf attacks, but they're not really lone wolf attacks. These are driven by an ideology, and it's the ideology that needs to be tackled, not necessarily certain members of the community.
And that's something I was tweeting out earlier today, that we need to stop getting comfortable using that term lone wolf, that it's more about an individual. It's an ideology that is driving them.
Correct. In Australia, there has been an incident just 2 days ago where an Islamic extremist has gone into a national bank, taken out a loan of $25,000 to buy solar panels and the tools he requires to conduct a terrorist attack. So these people will not stop at any limit. They will go to the max. They will go that extra mile to inflict terror and inflict harm on other people. And, to classify this as a lone wolf attack, that is wrong, because why is it every time there is a lone wolf attack, there's someone that celebrates it in the thousands, go out and celebrate this, and some of them even claim responsibility? You see, so it's not really a one-off attack that we can say, okay, fine, this happened, finished. Someone does something wrong, the West media, mainly left media, calls that lone wolf attack. All of a sudden, there are organizations around the world that are claiming responsibility and celebrating it. So it's not really a matter of individual choices. It's actually an ideology that we are dealing with right now that is threatening us.
And what do you think the end game is? What do you think that they're trying to do globally? What is their plan?
Well, the plan is actually very obvious. it's a matter of caliphate. It's a matter of authority. It's a matter of who runs the world. Currently, we have several forces around the world. Some of them are trying to control the banks. Some of them are trying to control the educational systems. ISIS, on the other hand, and its sympathizers, even those living within the West, like homegrown terrorists, really want to control matters to do with military, because it's a proven tactic, and even the simple equipment that they have is actually enough for them. Because as you see, terrorists don't really use weapons with high technology. They usually just remain using these guns and bombs, things that are very simple to use. Why? Because they don't have the education or training to use these high technology weapons. So because of that, in America, there's a market for all of that. There is a market for all of that. And terrorists will make use of that. And, especially when the people are busy with politics and so on, that's when the terrorist actually makes his hit, when the nation is busy doing something else. And if you've seen today, I have been very critical of New York Mayor de Blasio, and that is basically because New York as a city is a main target for such terrorist attacks. And the mayor himself has been exhorting his entire effort, resources, energy, money in bringing down the government that he opposes, rather than focusing on the extremists that are coming in and out of the country.
Yeah, you said fact. In the last 2 years, de Blasio spent all his energy and resources in trying to bring down President Trump, but not Islamic extremists. That is a very true and powerful statement.
Indeed, and I really believe that. In 2016, and I will be releasing my letter to him. I'm just seeking some legal advice, if I could actually do that. But I sent him a letter, and basically what I said was, look, I've been here for 2 weeks, and I'm noticing there are serious issues with regards to extremists over here. You've got those influenced by Saudi Arabian Wahhabism, and you've also got those influenced by Hezbollah and Iran. They've got their missionaries over here, some of them that I actually know from back home. So I know this guy has been involved in terrorist activities, and he's right there in front of me in America preaching. So how did he get a visa? How did he enter New York? So I didn't obviously put all that detail down, but that was exactly what I wanted to explain to the mayor of New York if I were to meet him. He completely ignored my letter. So I sent it on his website. I sent it through the receptionist. We called them up. We said we needed your email. We got that done. We also went in person. I sent my employee to go and give them the letter in person. We received no response whatsoever. I sent him another letter in 2017. In the beginning of 2017, I said, listen, Mayor, I'm willing to come. I've met with USA ambassadors before. I've got some really healthy diplomatic relations. I can help you on dealing with these matters. At the same time, I need your advice to move around in New York and tackle Islamic extremism. I got no response whatsoever. What I understood is there's no interest whatsoever in tackling Islamic extremism right now for this whole cabinet of de Blasio.
No, there isn't. I mean, there isn't as a whole. At the end of the day, in this country, I mean, we have the what is it? The base called? It's in York, Hancock or whatever in New York. Yeah, it's Hancock, New York. It's called a Islamville or Islamberg, and that's an area where Mubarak al-Jilani actually put that together, funded that spot, and this guy has known ties to extremism and terrorism. And I actually went out there to film and actually try to go interview people out there. And within 25 to 30 minutes of leaving the compound and being told I couldn't be there, the New York State Terrorism Task Force actually called me and said, "Sir, why are you there? You know, you're scaring these people." And I go, "Scaring these people?" is like, I simply pulled up in a vehicle. I walked up with my hands out and calmly asked, and I had it on video camera. I said, "Hey, would you guys explain talking to us, letting us know, what this place is, to maybe, calm some people down." And if you guys hear this in the background, the Imam is in an airport right now, and there's going to be announcements from time to time. So I'll give that a second.
Sorry about that.
That's all good. But
Okay, sorry about that.
no, that's fine. But I've actually gone out and I've interviewed and I've tried to approach people in a very calm, peaceful, non-confrontational way. And at the end of the day, I end up getting contacted by our terrorism task force and stuff, and they seem more concerned about me being concerned about certain individuals with ties to extremism than they do about the people with ties to extremism. And I just find that very odd.
Indeed. There is another matter that I always raise with regards to extremism in the country, and that is the fact that we have now people entering prisons as thieves, as regular criminals that we have, thieves, people who fight, and so on, and I say graduate out of prison as terrorists. So who's responsible for that?
Yeah.
How does that happen? Because that doesn't happen instantly. It's not like a virus that you catch. These people are actually being groomed. They're being taught. There are lessons being conducted. Who is bringing these books into the prisons so that these people are actually being educated in a wrong and false way? Who is creating that jihadi atmosphere for the prisoners in New York? Who is doing that exactly? And this goes around the whole country, everywhere in the West. Why is it that people do not want to take responsibility when we know that these things are happening? Obviously, my work revolves around this matter, going around spreading awareness. This is what's happening. And we received some really positive feedback from many government officials and authorities around the West. But it's just that I was very frustrated to see that Blasio refused to meet with me. In fact, he completely ignored my letter. And my letter won't actually stand out, because I've dealt with mayors before and I know how quick they can respond. But he completely ignored me. And now look at what's happened. 8 people killed, dozens injured. I was just really frustrated when I heard this today. I believe he needs to take some sense of responsibility.
And what do you think about President Trump coming out and saying that we need to put a travel ban, a hold on certain specific countries that have ties to extremism? Overall, did you think that was a good idea? I mean, what is your viewpoint on that?
My viewpoint at the time hasn't changed. It's still that very same viewpoint. A respected country can only be considered a respected country if it has respectable borders. If people disrespect the borders of a country, then that country is no longer a respected country. And a country's honor and reputation has to be seen and reflected in its borders and its border control. And I was completely supportive of the fact that, America had actually taken that action to prevent people who could be potential terrorists from coming into this country. And it's not like everybody was banned. You still had students that were studying in America that went back home to Saudi Arabia and came back, and some of them were just interrogated and let in. I had a friend who actually lives in Washington, D.C. He's a Muslim, but he got married to an American citizen. He was vetted, interrogated, let into the country. It's not like the administration is a racist, discriminative administration that wants to crack down on all Muslims. That's not right. And this is the main issue that leftists don't understand and many Muslims don't understand. Trump is not against Muslims. He's not putting a blanket over everyone. All he's saying is we've had some really bad experience when it comes to immigration. And we've had some serious terrorist attacks. One of the most, probably 9/11 would be the worst that we've ever seen in this century. So we've had some serious terrorist attacks in America, and we just want to put a ban to find out what's going on, solve our problems, and then we can take control once again and let people come in. But that was very misunderstood because of the Hillary campaign, and that sparked the protests and so on. I mean, each one of them wants a safe America. All of them want a safe America. In fact, many of them still support George Bush because they believe he kept them safe and so on, right? But why is it that when Trump wants the same thing, but in a way that suits our time, everybody wants to go against him? Now, we could disagree with Trump on certain issues. It's not like he's infallible, and he doesn't claim that. But this is a reasonable matter. If he's going to ban people from coming to America from countries that literally they themselves ban extremists. Yeah. So most of the organizations that we have in the West, such as Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is it's operating unofficially in America, officially in the UK, officially in Australia, these very organizations are banned in Saudi Arabia. They're banned in Oman. They're banned in Dubai. So why is it that Muslims get to ban their own terrorists and we're supposed to welcome them into our country? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it makes no sense at all. I mean, there's another agenda behind it, and it's disturbing to see that people will put their politics over human life. You know, when we look at the attacks that have happened in Europe, and we look at the attacks that have continued to happen in places like Paris, I found it very odd. There was an article that came out where it said the French government was going to put a wall around the Eiffel Tower to protect it from terrorist attacks. Meanwhile, it wasn't concerned about building borders, strong borders, vetting people, and they didn't care about the citizens itself, but they were very concerned about protecting that monument.
Indeed, indeed. One of the main issues that people misunderstand me for is that they believe that I am a ultra-right person because of my conservative views. Now, I would just like to clarify this for everyone, since we spoke about Trump and so on. I am neither left-wing or right-wing. I'm not someone who speaks about politics every now and then. You know, I just have my opinions. Yeah. I'm a man of peace. But the main reason why I hold these views, as it might come out to be somewhat, let's say, eye-opening for other people, and they might be surprised as to how could a Muslim imam support the travel ban and so on, that is simply because I've been through it all. I was in Iraq when ISIS took over Mosul. My cousins were burnt alive. I had to flee. My parents had to flee from Iraq because Saddam Hussein had execution orders on them. You know, I was born as a refugee with no documents whatsoever in the middle of a war. And it wasn't war between Christians and Muslims. It was Muslims against Muslims. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I grew up through all of that. I came to Australia, and I know the potential danger that this matter brings along with. And I just want to protect Australia. I want to protect America. I want these countries to be protected from all of this. Therefore, my views right now, which could be seen as controversial, I actually take the future into consideration. I don't really deal with the matter that we're dealing with right now alone. I take the future into consideration. And therefore, I am very supportive of the ban. You know, we need to make sure that whoever comes into the country doesn't hate us, doesn't want to kill us, doesn't want to murder us, and so on, because the ban itself is also protecting Muslims. You do have loyal Muslims who serve in the military and so on. That ban is actually protecting them as well. So I don't see why the Muslim community or even the leftists want to, you know, take advantage of all of this and become heroes, you know, using this whole wave, this whole discussion of, oh, Trump is banning this, Trump is doing that. I just believe it's a time where common sense says terrorists need to be stopped, and we need to exercise all means necessary to stop them.
Well, it's the people who've not really been cultured in their life, too. A lot of people who haven't traveled. I've been to Iraq many times. I've been to Afghanistan. I've been to many other countries, and I've seen the things you're talking about and explaining, the Sunni versus Shia and back and forth, and it's horrible, the bloodbaths that go on there, and it is Muslim versus Muslim a lot of times, and then you have different, you know, sections of the Muslims that are going after the Christians that are there. It's horrible, the things that are out there, and a lot of people need to be cultured and understand and see what's going on, you know. It shouldn't be odd or weird that specific Muslims would be scared of other types of Muslims, like, you know, because I doubt you consider yourself anything like ISIS, right?
Impossible.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, and anybody would fear that type of behavior and that type of action. So, you know, it's just ignorance by the left when they act that way. And there's nothing racist about wanting to keep potential terrorists out from wanting to kill you. Know, I have a question for you. What do you think about Linda Sarsour? I feel kind of that she's a wolf in sheep's clothing here in the U.S.
Okay, I'm going to tell you something about Linda. And, you know, I've come out previously and I've called her for a debate, and I've said, listen, let's come and debate whether or not Islam does have extremist ideologies in it, whether it's in need of reform. And she doesn't respond. I've called her out on her nonsensical statements and views in the past on Twitter, you know, and I've had tens of thousands of retweets from what I say about her and so on. But I'm going to tell you something. And, you know, this is something you might want to take into consideration, research-wise. Linda is actually a front. She's not an independent individual that has relations with certain organizations here and there in America, and that's about it, because that's what people see. They see her as a Muslim who goes around with her makeup and her stylish hijab, and she speaks every now and then, and she's got a few relations here and there. That's not really the case. Linda is actually a front. She's a front by a much greater establishment, and she's actually benefiting many sides. The first type of organization or movement that would be benefiting from Linda, and I highly doubt that there is no funding. I highly doubt. That would be this whole new approach to Islam by Saudi Arabia. This whole new, let's have some makeup and women driving and so on. Linda would be one of the first people that will be approached by the government of Saudi Arabia. That's the type of people they look for. And it's not. Don't be surprised if you hear in the future that Linda is traveling to Saudi Arabia and chilling with those people, having meetings about moderate Islam, so-called moderate Islam. And none of it is actually moderate. I know them very well. That's to begin with. Another establishment will be the left, which is very obvious. She's actually a front for the left. The left can never be considered a proper leftist establishment without having hijabi Muslim women figures out there saying exactly what they want. Linda is nothing but a microphone. She's nothing but a speaker for the left. Why? Because whoever goes against her can easily be labeled an Islamophobe, a racist, and so on. And whoever supports her appears to be supporting humanity and the oppressed ones and the oppressed minorities. Do you see how politics plays over here? So they have a Muslim lady, young. She's young and she's got her hijab and her makeup and her powerful speech and her charismatic talk and her demanding approach. And she's fed information. She is fed information. Linda has speechwriters. She has political advisors. She has people telling her what to do. She doesn't make her movements like that. The same people that fund her, and I'm pretty sure the government knows exactly who funds her, the same people who fund her have agendas, and she also has an agenda. None of that is just, for the sake of God, we want to have a good country, we want to vote for Hillary. No. She was brought there in election time for a reason. She was given fame for a reason. She dresses that way for a reason. She marches for a reason. And it's all an agenda. All of it is an agenda.
Yeah, I mean, she said that it's not my job to educate Jewish people that Palestinians deserve dignity. And she said many things, against Jewish people. Then she goes out and she tweets out, Muslims for Jews. It always seems everything she does is very contradictory. Like I said, she seems like that perfect Trojan horse or that wolf in sheep's clothing, that she knows how to play the part to tug at certain people's heartstrings to get her in there. And then once she's there, she's just like, she's got this agenda, this hidden agenda. And like you said, I believe she's definitely fronting for a lot of people out there. To get out different types of ideology and to pull people in to kind of on their side. It's just, she's not what she seems, but she is what she seems, Indeed. It's you see right now we have many ideologies and many people and many organizations and many public figures and many powerful figures who are against President Trump. Now, having that said, these people, they've got lots of money and they have time and they do have some sort of power. So they will be exercising their power and their time and their money to promote ideas that show that the nation is actually being oppressed by Trump and that, the racism rates have increased and people are being oppressed and nobody wants him and we should impeach him and the right are all racist and they're anti-human and so on. So who can push that for them? Who can push that for them? They have websites, they have social media, they'll fund the CNN and so on. But then you also need human beings that go around influencing people in the thousands of this very agenda. Linda is one of them. And then you'll have Christians and you'll have rabbis that are very similar to Linda and who also give their communities a hard time. Yeah. What do you think the percentage is in America of these type of sleeper cells and possible radicalized people that are kind of just sitting around to either be inspired or waiting for a call to do something? I mean, you've been here before. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
I'm a very realistic person when it comes to statistics and giving a percentage and so on. I'll give you one example. Sorry, the announcement is on again.
Oh, that's fine. We can wait for a second. Once again, if you guys just now join us, this is LibertyOneTV.com. You're watching Rogue Right. My guest is Imam Tawhidi. He's out traveling right now. He is at the airport, and we are having a discussion about what happened in New York today, about radical Islam, and the discussion surrounding that as well. And back to you, Imam.
Yes. With regards to the mosques and the sleeping cells and the Islamists and the terrorists and so on, you see, in Australia, a police officer was actually shot dead in Sydney in front of a police station by a 15-year-old kid. And the 15-year-old kid, the Australian intelligence actually showed that the 15-year-old kid had only been to the mosque 2 times. 2 Friday sermons, and each Friday sermon only lasts for 45 minutes. So 2 45-minute speeches went through, and Fahad Jabbar went up to the CCTV camera of the mosque and gave that, that index finger that says one God, the ISIS symbol. Mm-hmm. He showed that to the CCTV camera of the mosque after his second attendance only. 2 weeks. Not even 2 full weeks, just 45 minutes a week. He was completely radicalized. A 15-year-old went and he obtained a gun, and the gun he wasn't comfortable with, so he took it back and he got another one. So imagine how fast this could happen. And he came and he shot people, and he shot at the police station. He went straight to the police station and shot. This guy was suicidal, a 15-year-old. So nobody can actually put statistics and say, well, there are 3 or 4. No. It's a matter of sermons. It's a matter of it's that 1 second where it clicks in the mind of that 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 20-year-old that says, yes, it's time to go to heaven. And they go out and they do such things.
And so where is that coming from? You hear so many arguments, and I'm going to speak kind of as an ignorant person, because for people who might not understand, but how much of the Quran is extreme in a sense? How much of the things that are being preached actually extreme? Because when you say that, people make an argument that the Quran teaches a lot of extremist things, and then you'll have these certain types of Muslims come out, no, nothing extreme is being said, nothing extreme is being taught, but we're seeing these actions, these types of things happening. And you have the Quran, you have the Hadith. Where is a lot of it coming from, and what's actually in there that's true, and what of it's BS that people are saying?
Okay, so with regards to the Quran is full of verses of defense, verses that speak about military, verses that speak about war. And these verses have actually been revealed, Muslims believe, they've been revealed by God during times of conflict, speaking about certain people that the Muslims were engaging in war with. And especially when you take a look at that time, 6th, 7th century Christianity was also, going through its reformation. So things weren't really good on that side either. The Muslims had just emerged. They clashed with the Meccans, who were completely non-religious and idol worshippers in that sense. So it was a time of conflict. So these verses come, and they speak about conflict, and they say, go butcher and kill and defend and do this and do that. However, for the 21st century, these don't apply. They don't apply. And the main reason is that the imams that are coming into the country and they are obtaining visas come to preach these very verses, that the Westerners are filthy, they are not like us, we're not like them, right? And these verses apply. Now, with regards to the Hadith, firstly, the Quran, I don't believe these verses still apply. These verses have been abrogated. They're finished. They were revealed regarding a time. It's history. Done. That was it's in the Quran because it's part of the development of Islam, not that it's something obligatory today. That's how I see it. That's what a reformed Muslim sees. A reformed Muslim sees violence as history. Finished. Now it's a time of unity amongst all human beings. With regards to the Hadith, which you asked about, the Hadith is full of jihad, it's full of violence, and I am someone who believes that books of Hadith need to be banned, not burnt, but banned completely, at least from universities, at least from main libraries, so they are not used as main sources for research by students, and that they are not to be promoted and published in the West.
Okay, so then where is this radicalization coming from? Are are these imams, these preachers within these mosques, are they preaching the Quran and sprinkling bits of the Hadith in it and trying to confuse individuals that they're one and the same? I mean, what's happening there? How is this happening? So we can kind of get a better understanding of where this is coming from, in a sense.
Right. So when it comes to the Quran, what the Quran does is it gives concepts. The Quran gives a concept of defense. It gives a concept of dealing with the enemy. It gives a concept of what are the ethics of war. These are concepts. The Hadith then comes and elaborates. The Hadith comes and says, behead and chop and pull out eyes and take women hostage and do this and do that and so on. And you know, with the Hadith, it's a human being speaking. These books were written by regular scholars. Regular caliphs, the fathers-in-law of Prophet Muhammad, they were terrorists. They were terrorists, and the Muslims don't want to accept that. They were terrorists. How on earth could Islam spread from Saudi Arabia all the way to Russia and Bosnia and Africa and down to South Asia? How did that happen? How? There was no Google. There was no Facebook. How did it happen? There was no internet. There was no YouTube. How did it happen? It happened by the sword, and nobody can deny this fact. Islam was spread by the sword. It was spread by the sword, and I'm not going to deny this. And most of this whole procedure is recorded in the hadith, in the books of history. And they are then implemented once again when taught in schools, when taught and spoken of in sermons. That is exactly what drives these youth to want to revise their history. And they see that as something that should be celebrated.
And how many mosques and how many places have you been to? Do you see the Hadith being taught and spoken about?
Oh, I grew up in those mosques. So that's the main reason why.
So it is happening
why I don't have a mosque.
So it is happening a lot then.
Well, you see, you have on YouTube these hidden cameras that go into the mosques and actually show how people are being radicalized and beat this, and it happened in the UK where it shows that children were being beaten and they were taught to beat the people and taught to hate the non-Muslims and classify them as disbelievers and as pagans and kuffar and so on. You see, so far only 3 or 4 mosques have been exposed. And that's only a sample. That's only an example of what happens. And that was only on one occasion that's what they found in the hidden cameras. If you want to have cameras in every mosque running 24 hours, broadcasting live, to the world that this is what's happening, you'd be shocked. You'd be completely shocked.
Yeah, it's always interesting. Like with the attacks in San Bernardino, when the attack in San Bernardino, California happened, I was actually in Hamtramck, the little subdivision in Detroit that is mostly Muslim. And the attack happened. We fly out to San Bernardino, California, and I'm interviewing Muslims within the same mosque where the couple was who carried out the attack. And they're like, oh, we never saw any hints of radicalization. We don't know where that would have came from. Every time I've interviewed individuals coming from these mosques where an individual was at and practiced his faith, they always say they never saw any sign. They never knew anything about it, that nothing was being preached there. How much is it BS? Are they lying? Are they covering up for these guys, in your opinion? Or are they just somehow being radicalized on their own within their head? And it's their understanding and depiction of what's being preached.
In reality, the mosque imams are the main source for radicalization around the world. Mosque imams, they're the main ones, because a 15-year-old, a 20-year-old who is supposed to be, hanging around with his girlfriend, going to the cinemas, playing football, hears something on the news, listens to something on YouTube, hears something from their friends, watches his cousin get radicalized. Then they come to the mosque imam and they ask him a question. They say, oh, we saw this. What is your opinion? It's the mosque imam that turns around and encourages them towards becoming more radicalized. And the mosque imams, there's nothing positive that comes out of their mouths when they're in private. In private, mosque imams and my teachers and members of my own family who are also imams, in public, they're very supportive, and I'm speaking about extended family. They're very supportive of the West, and we love democracy, and we love you, and this and that. And between closed doors, and I remember this from the age I was 5 years old, I remember this, there's always been hate after hate after hate when it comes to the non-Muslims and the Christians and the Jews and everybody other than them, even Muslims from other denominations. And this is something I'm not going to deny or even conceal. Mosque imams are the main reason for spreading hate, and they're the biggest hypocrites. Not all of them, I'm not putting a blanket on all of them, but the majority of them are responsible for what happens. And we see this when terrorist attacks happen, and hardly any of them come out and protest. Hardly any of them come out and protest. You know, probably in every country you'll have only three imams who are probably outspoken, and even they have agendas. Even they have agenda. For example, the Muslim IQ, the handle Muslim IQ on Twitter, Qasim Rashid. You know, he comes out, he speaks on Fox News, and he's always criticizing radical Islam, and he's criticizing ISIS. But at the same time, he's pushing for a caliphate, the Ahmadiyya caliphate, and that's not being honest. You know, he's trying to market a new brand of Islam, which is his own caliph. And we don't want no caliph in the West. We don't want your caliph. We don't want ISIS's caliph. We don't want any caliph. We've got the Constitution, and that is all what we have. And that's all what we want. The main reason is Muslim imams don't speak, and then you have leftist media channels like the CNN who come out and say, oh, no, there are Muslim imams speaking. Look, and they stage it. They staged it after the London terrorist attacks. Correct? And the main reason why I say they staged it is because two of those people standing there are actually my friends. And they had just arrived in London 3 days ago, 3 days before that incident. And they had no idea what was going on. They were dragged on the street, given a paper. They don't even know what's going on. They don't even know where to stand. And two of them are actually my friends who had just come. And it was just a joke when I looked at it. I called them up. I said, what were you doing protesting? How did that happen? He goes, I don't know. They just dragged me and they gave me a paper. And, you know, I said, okay, fine, it's against terrorism. But he has no idea what was going on. You know, it's all staging. So when you stage it, you're giving people another image. Another thing, before I wrap up, another thing is the fact that every time something happens, the left comes out and says, oh no, Muslims are not responsible for what happens, for radical Muslims do. This here is actually preventing the moderate Muslims from the need to come out and criticize and condemn these radicals and extremists. And because of that, these radicals are allowed now to move and operate with minimal criticism.
Yep. Indeed, I agree with you on that. I've always been very curious why people aren't defensive in a sense, going, hey, this doesn't have anything to do with me or what I believe. This is completely and totally radical. What they're doing is screwed up, and I disavow any acts of what has just happened, you know. And it always shocks me when it turns into, instead of saying that, it becomes a defensive mode. Like, oh, well, it's not everybody. It's not all of us. It's not this or that. And usually when people do that, there's some sort of guilt that they feel or whatever, and they use that as a tactic to kind of to push the blame away or something like that. Don't you think?
Sorry, the announcement is on.
Yeah.
Yeah. With regards to trying to push the claim away, that will never really work. I mean, people are very educated. We live in a time where you can jump on memory TV and you can see them admitting for themselves that the Jews have no right to live, the Christians have no right to live, we need to take everything they own, we need to do this, we need to do it. It's all violence after violence after violence, you know, and when you have that in front of you on live TV, correct? Mm-hmm. No matter what the left tells you, you're not going to believe them. This is from the horse's mouth. You're literally seeing the guy say, I want to come and I want to blow up and I want to do this. And it's all there available. It's all available. And it happens every single day. It's not like it's one time finished and it was condemned. No. It happens regularly on TV, and every single day in every mosque around the world. These things do happen.
And you have these what would be considered extremist views by your own people, right? So how are you treated by fellow Muslims, people within your community, and why is it you travel a lot?
Well, number one, I am treated differently depends where I go. I am seen as a reformer, someone who's sorry about this.
Oh, you're fine. If you guys are just now tuning in, this is LibertyOneTV.com. You're watching Rogue Right. I'm joined today with Imam Tawhidi, and he is breaking down the attacks in New York City today and just talking about his religion in general and some of his thoughts and mine, and just having a great conversation about this all together. Back to you, sir.
Indeed. I am treated differently with regards to Muslims. Many of them understand that I am a reformer. They understand that I'm a third-generation imam. I come from a very prominent family. I represented a very prominent hierarchy, probably the second most followed Grand Islamic authority on earth, Ayatollah Shirazi. And, you know, I'm very well known in the Muslim community as being someone who does have open-minded views and so on. This would actually irritate the radical imams, the radical communities. But at the same time, many Muslims do agree with me, but they are afraid of coming down and saying, yes, we agree with this controversial sheikh. Now, with regards to my travel, I travel a lot because I meet with officials quite oftenly. And having that said, I travel at least twice a week. I travel around the world, and most of this I no longer announce. I mean, in 2016, those who go to my Facebook pages will see in 2016, I was actually uploading all of my meetings with ministers, members of parliament, and so on. I no longer upload my images of my meetings because every time I have a meeting with someone, that minister then gets threatened. They receive hate emails. So from now on, I just stop, putting news regarding my progress. But my followers do understand that this guy is 24/7 working towards the Islamic Reformation. I am meeting with UN officials. I'm meeting with members of parliament, literally meeting within the Australian parliament with governing ministers. I'm meeting with senators on a regular basis. I'm meeting with ambassadors around the world. You know, I've met with numerous American ambassadors around the world, especially in the Middle East. Some of them who no longer serve, some of them serve, some of them have even moved on to teaching in universities and so on, and I'm always in contact with them. I visit them, media, I have a good relationship with the media. I give advice to numerous journalists behind the scene. Nobody really knows that I do all of these things. I will not mention who I give advice to every now and then. There are security councils that contact me. There are ambassadors that speak to me on a regular basis, and I'll keep that for now. But in the future, the people will know exactly who Tawhidi is and what he's about and so on. I try to tackle radical Islam from a diplomatic, international perspective. I don't settle for the whole cultural thing. Let's open a Islamic center and let's try and tackle through that. No. I'm actually going out face to face with these radicals, and I'm trying to bring them down one after the other. And we've been very successful. We've shut down many organizations in Australia. We've shut down numerous centers around the world, and especially in Iraq, in Baghdad. And I'm going to continue what I'm doing because I see it is actually being productive.
Yeah, I love a lot of the stuff you're doing. I've watched your videos now for at least about 6 months when I found out who you were, and I've been following a lot of things you've done, and I really commend you on what you're doing. And I'm sure you've got to be getting death threats and things like that. I mean, I'm sure you have to travel around with
numerous.
And I'm sure you got to travel around with security and all that. I mean, it's just crazy. So.
Indeed. Just recently, my car was attacked, and the label ISIS was engraved all over the place. And lucky I wasn't home. But yeah, these things do happen. It's part of it's the nature of the work.
Well, thank you for all your work, and thank you for joining us today. I know you're out traveling right now, and just thank you for taking the time to speak to me about a lot of these issues. I appreciate it.
No problem. You're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
All right. Have a good day, sir.
Goodbye.
Bye. Well, there you have it. We just spoke with Imam Tawhidi. He is traveling right now. He spoke to us about the issues in New York. He spoke about the fact that he reached out to the New York mayor, Blasio, numerous times years ago about the things he saw within the city of New York and the possibility of future attacks and the radicalization of Muslims within that city. And then we just kind of got into a nice conversation about Islam in general, and some of the things that we hear, some questions I had about that. We talked about Linda Sarsar and all that. So thank you for watching. This has been LibertyOneTV.com, And go sign up today. Go to liberty1tv.com. Use promo code ROGUE, ROGUE. That'll get you in the door.